The Ministry of Information and Communication Technology is conducting a two-day validation workshop at the NamPower Convention Centre in Windhoek on the Data Protection Bill. The purpose is to deliberate on input and feedback from stakeholders, which has been gathered through extensive consultations nationwide. Over 50 participants from public and private institutions attended the workshop, which ends today. For more on this, we're joined by the Deputy Director of Institutional Policy Regulation Monitoring, the IPRM, in the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Dr. Elizabeth Uyarwa Kamutevu. Doctor, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on the show.
Doctor, what is the overall objective and purpose of this validation workshop for stakeholders on the Data Protection Bill?
You have rightly put it that we conducted in a very extensive consultations across all the 14 regions in Namibia to discuss the draft data protection bill, and the aim was to solicit inputs, reflections, comments, and statements from diverse of stakeholders across the spectrum of life. And the validation just gathered to confirm on what we have gathered across the 14 regions, what are the issues that were raised, what was considered in the final draft, not to be final, and what was omitted, and how do we leverage all the inputs and comments, because mind you that it's not everything that was proposed could be considered, because at time one has to do a due diligence to the comments and inputs and come up with a decision whether that input, particular input or comments warrants to be in a bill, or at some point we also refer to some of the comments and inputs to be included in the regulations that might be drafted after the law has been passed. So not everything that was collected or was said during the consultation or proposed to say were considered, but we look at those substantive issues and we incorporated them and we interrogated them through the course of 2 days that we gathered in Windhoek.
Who were some of the key stakeholders that participated in this workshop?
Yeah, I must say that we are very happy and pleased to see that we really managed to get all the key stakeholders on board. As I said earlier, we went out to the region, and really we have some local authorities and regional council representatives at the meetings or at the workshop. We have the line ministries, government agencies and officers. We have service providers in the ICT sector. We have financial institutions. We have tech entrepreneurs. We have researchers. We have academia, institution of higher learning. We have community members. We have youth representatives, and all the diverse stakeholders from different fields of life. So it was a well-represented workshop, and we are very pleased and happy to have them at the last 2 days of validation.
And what topics or aspects of the Data Protection Bill were covered during this workshop?
We went through the whole bill, and we look at section by section. This bill has 72 sections that are divided into 7 parts. And the most important content that we discussed and covered, it was the issue of the rights of the data subject, which is the owner of the subject, the guiding principles, how personal data should be collected, processed, stored, retrieved, managed, and so on. We look at those that data should be collected in a fair and lawful manner. It should be collected for a purpose. It should be collected for a specific purpose. It should be data of quality without many errors. It should be correct, complete, updated. It should be safeguarded against any risk of loss of data or data breaches and so on. Then we look at the obligations of the data controllers and processors, those people that collecting information from the data subjects. And those obligations were also underlined by any breaches and what are the punitive measures should the controllers and processors breach any data or commit any data breaches. And we also look at the authority that is proposed to oversee the process of data protection in Namibia. We also look very critically at cross-border transfer of personal data. That was a very also critical topic during the 2 days of discussion, that how do we want Namibia data to be only stored and processed in Namibia. As you are aware, there is a multinational company. Sometimes you receive a call from a subsidiary in South Africa that you should pay your dues and so on. And we also look at the jurisdiction and territorial jurisdiction of personal data. We also look at those service providers that are providing these cloud services that are not necessarily stationed or based in Namibia. How do you take those people into account or to comply to data protection within the territory of Namibia? So we look at a very range of issues that affect data protection in general. And we also look at how is this draft law aligned to any international treaties, protocol or convention, and how is it complied to any international best practices.
Any challenges or concerns regarding the data protection bill that was addressed?
Yeah, we experienced some challenges and concerns, especially the issue of punitive measures, the proposed fines, and what if a certain controller or processor would they pay the fine? What is the next level of action, or what is the recourse? Yeah, we look at that, and we also look at the issue of deaf people also came in. Is this data protection only confined to the living people, or should be also extended to the deaf people and so on? We look, there was a very interesting topic, the right to be forgotten. For how long should our birth information or information of the that is not in good faith can be kept in a loop? Can someone be forgotten and that data can be erased or removed from any database and so on? People also look at how long we can keep these criminal records of people for life. Why is it kept for life? Why is the records of people that are accused still kept while people are not convicted for certain crimes and so on? And we look at variety of topics. The issue of biometric data also came up. It's a serious prohibition to collect biometric data. But everything boils down that every data that needs to be collected should be done through a consent of the data subject. That I'm referring to the owner of the information or the owner of the data.
Just very lastly, Dr. Elizabeth, would you please share some of the outcomes from the workshop?
No, I think the outcome in summary is that we need to still to fine-tune the bill. We have to look at some best practices and benchmark, especially also the functionality of the proposed authority that will oversee or having the oversight function of data protection in Namibia. We have to look at other countries that have advanced, how they put it in place. And very important, as we move away from the law, we need now to look at the pertinent issue of data governance. That will also be built into the regulations, how we go about. There will be issues of fees that need to be payable, issues of levies that need to be payable. So there is a complex of issues that we still have to look at before we even operationalize this law once it is enacted in Parliament.
Dr. Elizabeth Kamutredu, thank you so much for your time this evening, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it was my pleasure having you, and good evening.
Well, when we come back, we have more conversations. We talk to Dr. Anna Shikwaya concerning oral hygiene. Stay with us.